Hello and welcome back to Indus News with me, Osman Lone. Well, we begin this hour with our top story, and that's Pakistan has urged the UN Human Rights Council to set up a commission to probe rights abuses in occupied Kashmir. In a tweet, Prime Minister Imran Khan welcomes the Council's statement asking for the curfew to be lifted. More in this report.
The UNHRC has opened its 3-week session to examine worldwide human rights violations in Geneva. It has condemned Indian actions in the occupied valley. Millions of Kashmiris are living under curfew after India unilaterally revoked occupied Kashmir's special status on 5th of August. Addressing the session, the Council High Commissioner Michelle Bachelet expressed concern over the detention of local political leaders and activists. She told India to end the lockdown in occupied Kashmir.
I have appealed particularly to India to ease the current lockdowns or curfews, to ensure people's access to basic services, and that all due process rights are respected for those who have been detained. It is important that the people of Kashmir are consulted and engaged in any decision-making processes that have an impact on the future.
Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said that High Commissioner's statement is very encouraging. Qureshi said the Council has reiterated Pakistan's stance regarding the situation in occupied Kashmir.
In the next 2 days, we will be engaging with international human rights bodies and NGOs to highlight the stance of Pakistan and Kashmiris. The world is witnessing that Indian oppression in occupied Kashmir is unveiling slowly.
Pakistan's Prime Minister has repeatedly said Islamabad will never leave Kashmiris alone in their struggle for self-determination. Major world capitals have also stressed the need to resolve the issue as per the UNSC resolutions.
Indian-occupied Kashmir continues to be under lockdown after over a month now. A total communications blackout on landlines, mobiles and the internet is still in place as the Indian Army patrol deserted roads, making sure the lockdown is enforced. The United Nations has shown a deep concern for the situation. More in this report.
People are facing serious problems in Indian-occupied Kashmir. They are not even allowed to observe their religious rights any longer. Meanwhile, India has tightened its 6-week-long security clampdown even further. It has banned Ashura processions, which has infuriated locals.
The Indian government is clamping down on us by shutting all communication lines so that no one is able to speak or raise their voice. They know that the event of Karbala and Ashura is a platform from where Kashmiris can raise their voice. This is an interference into our religious matters. We are against their clampdown.
Kashmiris consider India's latest step a violation of religious freedom.
We are only commemorating Muharram. We are not fighting against anyone. Injustice is happening with Muslims in Kashmir. Forces are brutal with us. We aren't throwing stones, but they are targeting us. They also targeted our religious centers, ransacking them and breaking glass doors and windows.
Meanwhile, Indian forces continue to detain people. The UN has taken notice of the situation, condemning the restrictions imposed by India.
Now, in other news, the International Atomic Energy Agency says Iran is moving towards renouncing the 2015 nuclear deal. The IAEA has confirmed this after its chief, Cornel Ferulta, visited Tehran to check Iran's nuclear program's transparency program. The UN's nuclear watchdog said the installation of advanced centrifuges to produce enriched uranium will lead to increased production. The IAEA says Iran will be in breach of the agreement if it exceeds the uranium enrichment. Meanwhile, Iran says the EU has failed to act on their promise within the 2015 deal. But Tehran says the decision can be reversed if all parties fulfill their commitments. Well, Saudi Arabia has also said it wants to enrich uranium in the future for its planned nuclear power program. Speaking at a conference in Abu Dhabi, Energy Minister Abdul Aziz bin Salman said Saudi Arabia is planning to build 2 nuclear reactors. Prince Abdul Aziz says the kingdom wants to diversify its energy. Riyadh is expected to issue the tender for the multi-billion-dollar project next year. The United States, Russia, South Korea, China and the French firms are involved in preliminary talks. Prince Abdul Aziz said there will be no radical change in Saudi oil policy and says the OPEC Plus alliance will stay for the long term. He called upon members to comply with output targets for oil. The minister said oil production cuts will benefit all exporting nations. 18 pro-Iran fighters have been killed in an airstrike in eastern Syria's Abu Kamal region. London-based war monitor, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, says it's not clear who carried out the raids. The airstrikes happened in target Syria's remote eastern desert. Control of the area is split between the United States-backed Kurdish fighters and groups aligned with Damascus, backed by Iran and Russia. More than 300,000 people have been killed in the Syrian civil war since 2011. Now, 29 people have been killed in 2 separate attacks in northern Burkina Faso. Government spokesperson Remy Fulganche said the attacks were a bid to sabotage security in the region. Fulganche said 15 were killed after a van hit an improvised explosive device in the Barcelogo area. He said 14 others were killed in another attack on a food convoy. Government officials say military reinforcements have been deployed in the area to prevent further attacks. Lebanon's Hezbollah claims it's shot down an Israeli drone outside the southern town of Ramya. This is the second time an Israeli UAV has crossed over into Lebanon in a week. Hezbollah's Al-Manar TV said the drone shot down by their forces is now in their possession. Last week, Tel Aviv's military drones targeted Hezbollah's offices in Beirut. Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah has warned of counterattacks deep inside Israeli territory if it's violated Lebanese airspace again. Now, North Korea said it's willing to resume talks with the United States that have stalled since a failed summit in February. North Korean Vice Foreign Minister Cho Son-hui said the meeting can be held later this month at a time and place agreed by both parties. Earlier, the US renewed its call for early resumption of the stalled nuclear talks. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said President Donald Trump will be disappointed if North Korea's Kim Jong-un does not resume dialogue. In an interview, Pompeo also hinted at working-level talks between Washington and Pyongyang soon. Pompeo said Kim has not yet violated his commitment to Mr. Trump regarding weapons testing, but he said Trump will not be thrilled if Kim's missile tests violate agreements made in previous meetings. The leader of Britain's opposition Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, says the government's decision to suspend Parliament is disgraceful. Earlier, Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced the suspension will begin at the close of parliamentary business today. Corbyn expressed concern over suggestions Prime Minister Johnson may refuse to seek an extension for Brexit. House of Commons Speaker John Bercow has announced he will resign on the 31st of October.
Extraordinary times when you have a Prime Minister saying he doesn't want to abide by what is a clear decision of a democratically elected Parliament, and that he's prepared to countenance plunging many people's lives into complete chaos.
In Russia, President Vladimir Putin's party has won a majority in the elections. Elections officials say United Russia won 24 seats out of the City Duma's 45. The Communist Party claimed 14 seats, while the centre-left, a Just Russia party, took just 4 seats. The election came into international limelight after opposition candidates were barred from the polls. This sparked mass protests. Putin's United Russia lost 16 seats from the 40 it previously held. The Central Election Commission chairwoman Ella Pamfilova says over 90% of registered voters cast their ballot. State communications watchdog Roskomnadzor has accused tech giants Google and Facebook of election meddling. It says US tech giants allowed political advertisements during Sunday's polls. It said they had been asked to ban such publicity. Russia and France have called for combined efforts from all signatories to save the Iran nuclear deal. Earlier, Tehran said it was activating nuclear centrifuges, taking a third step away from the accord. The Kremlin said the French and Russian presidents discussed the nuclear pact over the phone. It said President Macron and Putin exchanged information about steps that they will take that are on the track. The two presidents also assessed Saturday's prisoner exchange between Russia and Ukraine. They expressed hope for the normalization of Russia-Ukrainian relations. The Kremlin said both heads of state have agreed to continue contacts. Foreign and defense ministers of the two countries will meet today in the Security Cooperation Council. French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian says it's too early to lift sanctions imposed against Russia for annexing Crimea from Ukraine. French and Russian foreign and defense ministers met in Moscow today to discuss bilateral ties after a gap of 5 years. Speaking to the press, Le Drian said time has come to ease tensions with Russia. He said a prisoner swap between Russia and Ukraine is a positive step. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said progress on rebuilding ties is necessary. Now we'll be back with more stories after a short break. Hello and welcome back to Indus News with me, Usman Lone. Well, the fourth round of Russian-US counterterrorism consultations will be held in Vienna today, and Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Oleg Seromolotov and US Deputy Secretary of State John Sullivan will take part in the talks. Sullivan says he will use the platform to facilitate information sharing so the US can be protected from terror attacks. Seromolotov said both parties will sum up results and outline prospects. He said terrorist migration and the activities of IS in Afghanistan and terror financing are top of the agenda. Seromolotov said counterterrorism cooperation builds the confidence necessary for progress in bilateral relations. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has condemned xenophobic attacks in Johannesburg that's claimed 2 lives so far. The death toll in riots increased to 10 after the latest killings. 1 person was stabbed and another shot dead by a large group of armed attackers. Riot police fired stun grenades and rubber bullets to disperse crowds targeting shops. Many shops were set ablaze in the Malvern district. The attack started last week after lorry drivers staged a strike to protest against the employment of foreigners. Now, much like the on-ground situation in Gaza, Palestinian democracy tells a story of isolation. Elections haven't been held in the Palestinian territories since 2006. More in this report.
When Israelis vote next week for their 6th general election, it will be more than 13 years for Palestinians to have had the same right. Unemployment is at 30% as factional rivalries, infighting and Israeli restrictions persist. After a 2007 split, 2 governments effectively rule separate territories. President Mahmoud Abbas leads the West Bank-based Palestinian Authority and Hamas controls Gaza. A decade of reconciliation talks have brought no results.
It's all the same thing, whether right or left. It's all the same. We want someone who will help the people, whether left or right. We welcome anyone who is good and wants to help.
Following the 2004 death of longtime Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat, a push was made to rejuvenate democracy. In 2005, Abbas Fatah won presidential elections, but a year later, Hamas shocked the world by beating him in parliamentary polls. Palestinian politics has been static since, with the two tightening their grips on respective territories.
The Palestinian people will be affected either way, and the result will be negative on all aspects, because there is no progress in establishing peace. There is no land left because of increase in settlements, and we have no rights. Whomever the winner in both cases, the Palestinian people will pay a high price.
Israel maintains a crippling blockade of Gaza, and while it prepares for its general elections, there is very little hope for Palestinians being able to choose their own rulers.
Now, French authorities say this year's severe heat wave in the country has killed 1,500 people. Health Minister Agnès Buzyn said the death toll was 91% higher than the average calculated over the last 10 years. But Boizon said Paris was able to cut mortality rates by a factor of 10 due to preventative measures. Record-breaking heat hit France and other parts of Europe from June 24th to July 27th this year. During the spell, France recorded its highest ever recorded temperature of 46 degrees Celsius. Now, 4 people are missing after a cargo vessel overturned off the coast of Georgia. The US Coast Guard has rescued 20 crew members. The cargo ship was disabled in the St. Simons Sound after a fire erupted aboard the cargo ship. The company and South Korea's foreign ministry said rescue teams were searching for 4 crew members believed to still be inside the ship in the engine room. The ship was due to arrive in Baltimore in the United States today. Now, in the United States, the first responders to the 9/11 attacks were hailed as national heroes during the immediate aftermath of the terrorist attack there. But today, they are fighting for their lives after developing cancer and other cardiovascular diseases in the line of duty. More in this report.
As the 18th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks approaches, New York continues to count the number of people who have developed cancer or other serious illness. The attacks at Twin Towers release unprecedented amounts of carcinogenic chemicals into the air. Firefighters and volunteers who helped with the month-long cleanup were the first to be affected.
And it was determined that because I was down here and I had so much exposure to it, my cancer was most likely related to 9/11. And then also developed in my lungs. Never smoked, never did anything. But it spread so rapidly also.
In recent years, the World Trade Center Health Program has diagnosed almost 10,000 with cancer, and at the end of June this year, 21,000 people not considered first responders were also in the program. Almost 4,000 were diagnosed with cancer. Health experts note a clear correlation between the two events.
There's never been an attack comparable to September 11th, and there's never been a chemical exposure comparable to September 11th. So nobody could predict exactly what would happen, where you take billions of tons of building material that cooked together for 99 days and emitted into the air downtown.
This cancer rate is expected to increase further. This is why President Donald Trump has signed a bill extending the compensation deadline to next year. The average compensation per patient is $240,000 or $682,000 for a deceased person.
Now, Bolivia's ambitious plans in South America are to expand its agriculture and is facing staunch criticism from the West. President Evo Morales has been accused of burning down forests for monetary gains. More in this report.
Fires are raging in Bolivia, burning through the Chicoitano dry forest in the country's southern Santa Cruz region. Experts say the fires are largely the result of logging to convert forests into farmland. President Evo Morales is promoting land farming in a bid to boost the country's economy.
We are growing economically. I realize I am not an expert, but I have realized that a country without economic growth is invisible in international summits of presidents, in meetings with American business, in Latin America and the world.
Critics link the fires to laws Morales has passed, encouraging farmers and ranchers to settle in forested areas in recent years. Output despite a drought. That includes permission this year to use slash and burn methods to ramp up output despite a drought. Experts say the charm of corporate benefits have corrupted decision makers.
Corporate interests are imposing their ideals on a country that is fighting for the poor. These types of policies do not use a lot of manual labor. They are industrialized and are also linked to transgenics. The intensive use of the earth goes against the policy of defending Mother Earth. against the policy of supporting behavior that is friendly when it comes to natural resources.
Bolivia's fires have swept over 2.1 million hectares of land, burning more than 700,000 hectares of forest in protected reserves. The government has rejected allegations it is fueling the fire, dubbing it a lie to destabilize growth.
Now, artificial intelligence is gaining traction day by day, and it's getting closer and closer to human intelligence. But can it match the brilliance of a classical musician? The idea was recently tested in the Austrian city of Linz, where Gustav Mahler's 10th Symphony was put up against music created by digital software. More in this report.
Austro-Bohemian, later Romantic composer Gustav Mahler was one of the leading conductors of his time. Now, one unusual orchestra performance in Austria has tried to find out if a software can imitate his creative style. The project's creator says the two can be clearly distinguished.
It all sounds like music. It is emotional. But someone who really knows Mahler will notice immediately that it is not him.
But not everyone agrees. Many in the audience said the difference in style between Mahler's compositions and music created by the AI is hardly noticeable.
I really don't feel like a big change, and I believe the orchestra was also really fine and perfect doing in interpretation, so I really enjoy it.
The performance was part of Linz's Ars Electronica festival, which aims to highlight connections between science, art and technology. An open source software called MuseNet was used to compose the artificially created music. At the event's closing, one AI researcher asked if machines are now so smart that they can accomplish great music, or is it the music of renowned composer like Mahler that's overrated?
In Madagascar, a priest is considered an arm of God by the local people there, and he's established a town on a landfill site. Akamasoa offers home, education, meals and above all, hope to an otherwise impoverished community. More in this report.
A mountain of garbage that became an oasis of hope. That's how one resident of Akamasoa describes the dump site. This pile of rubbish in Antananarivo was home to hundreds of families making a living sifting through the debris for scraps to sell.
It's hard work because it takes a lot of time to find something. Per day, I earn 40 cents for a bucket of coal, 50 cents for a basket of bones. I often earn 40 cents for aluminium bottles.
For the last 30 years, Humanitarian Association Akamasoa has been building villages like these to help the poor in Madagascar's capital. This woman can now send her children to school and put a roof over their heads. The town of Akamasoa was founded by 71-year-old Father Pedro Opeka. Born in Buenos Aires, he wanted to be a professional football player, but instead found his calling in helping Madagascar's downtrodden.
We humanized this garbage. We humanized it because if it had not been for our school, all the work that Amakasoa did here, it would have been a place of violence and of total anarchy. Today, they are poor, but virtuous. There is a dignity here. This dignity is priceless.
Leva believes he found dignity thanks to Father Pedro. He was 6 years old and searching for scraps on the dump with his parents when he met the priest. He was schooled thanks to the Akamasoa Association and is now a maths teacher.
For me, Father Pedro is the hand of God that touched me directly. When he says something, he does it. I've seen it for a long time.
For many here, Father Pedro is the embodiment of Christianity. His work and his attitude has a daily and uplifting impact on their lives.
Now, climate change made worse by humans has brought with it a number of challenges for the environment. One of these is the alien Great Barrier Reef that's alarmed the world of scientists and become the focal point for one of the most environmental organizations. But the days of worrying might be ending soon. More in this report.
The giant Pumas, emerging from an underwater volcano eruption near North Tonga, is heading towards Australia. It initially formed a floating raft spanning 150 square kilometers. That's roughly the size of 20,000 football fields.
If we were standing on the beach, for example, looking at this pumice, it would go to the horizon.
It's far denser. Denser?
Yeah.
The pumice poses no threat to people or the coastline here, but each piece that survives the journey will make its way to the reef. It will serve as a vehicle for organisms' growth. This is a positive development as Australia's government downgraded the health of the reef, which had lost half of its coral.
Billions and millions of individuals in at once to be able to find a new home, add to the existing populations that are here that have suffered over the last few years through bleaching, cyclones in particular, just giving that extra boost of new numbers to help replenish and restore the reef.
As the pumice raft continues to break, chances of it being dispersed along the Great Barrier Reef increase. While it isn't a cure, restocking some of the lost coral could help the reef to better cope with the threats it faces.
Now, the first beauty pageant for people with albinism was held in Malawi. The winners of the pageant were crowned by the country's First Lady. More in this report.
It's hard living with albinism anywhere in the world, but especially in Africa. Now, Malawi has taken a great step to boost the confidence of people living with the condition. To encourage the people living with albinism to live fuller lives, Malawi took a great step ahead by holding a beauty pageant in the country's capital. People from different walks of life attended the event with enthusiasm. The pageant winners were awarded a prize of $1,350 and a laptop. The First Lady of Malawi, Chikondi Kanjanza, crowned the winner.
Very excited. I didn't really expect to be the first ever Miss Albinism in Malawi. What I'm going to do now, firstly, is to bring awareness to communities, especially the local communities that hold negative attitudes, myths and misconceptions about persons with albinism.
Mr. Albinism in Malawi also expressed his joy.
There were a lot of handsome boys, a lot of intelligent boys, maybe more than me, but I've won the main prize. So I feel so excited, so overwhelmed.
The organizer is sure that the winner will increase awareness about living with albinism.
At the end of the day, these people are going to take oath of office and they are going to make sure that they play ambassadorial duties in making sure that they take issues of albinism even beyond the country.
UN Resident Coordinator in Malawi, Maria Jose Torres, believes all of them are people with talent and beauty.
Really acknowledge that before the census we thought that there were 15,000 people living with albinism in Malawi. Today we know you are 134,000. This is an amazing number of people with talent, with brains, and also with beauty.
The winners of the contest vowed to let the world know that persons with albinism also have to enjoy the human rights as everyone else has.
Now we'll be looking at the world of business and sports after the break, so do stay with us. Now in business news, the Chief Executive Officer of motor company Nissan, Hiroto Saikawa, will step down on the 16th of September following accusations of financial irregularities. The company's board of directors made the announcement after a meeting. Nissan's Chief Operating Officer Yashiro Yamauchi will take over as acting CEO. Saikawa is suspected of adding $440,000 to his compensation package by altering the terms of a bonus. He apologized for the payment last week but denied any wrongdoing. Well, it's 33 degrees here in Lahore, but let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, that's it from me and the team here in Lahore. I'll be back at the top of the hour with the headlines. Bye-bye.